The Centurion Project. Written by the 8th Day of Night. Chapter 13. Preparations. Journal entry 2221. Legio 1 Americana is fully up and running. I'm so excited. Well, the gear is done, spring is coming. We've been training together for months. It's going to work. I've been reading like crazy to make sure I know every tactical decision in the book. I'm going to be the best commander there ever was, and... Elias looked up from his journal, snapping it closed at the sound of a knock at his door. He checked his watch. Scarlet had decided to run home to grab some notebooks, and Elias wasn't expecting him back for another hour. Elias cautiously slid the journal back under his bed and crept forward, keeping his left hand near the hilt of the sword. The knock sounded again, a bit harder this time. Elias frowned as he thought about who it could be. He had already gotten yelled at by Nightshade and then Aluna for assaulting a guard. They had let him off with a warning, though. Since there were plenty of witnesses to Whiteshine's behavior, his response was declared justified, with the note that he would be in serious trouble if he did it again. Elias had taken it with silence, content in the knowledge that if the worm decided to try that stunt again, he wouldn't be left the hook with a light strangulation and verbal threats. Next time meant a severe beating, and if Whiteshine was stupid enough to come back for thirds, that meant death. Any threats Elias made would be put to action. He made sure to always use punishments he knew how to carry out, and luckily for him, that library was vast and detailed. If it wasn't for Nightshade or Luna, then who? As the third set of knocks echoed through his room, Elias gripped his gladius and flung the door wide open enough for him to see who it was, while also hiding the blade. Elias blinked in surprise when he saw Nightflash standing outside, a depressed expression on his face. The pony looked up to Elias, putting out a fake smile. "Hey, Red, can I come in? I wanted to talk to you about something." Elias nodded and let the door open fully. "Sure, Nightflash, I've got time." The Pegasus nodded in thanks and then walked into Elias's room, looking around only briefly before he settled on a desk chair. Elias watched Nightflash as he shuffled about. His wings, normally kept under his sides, were drooping toward the floor. His fur seemed ruffled, a far cry from the tidy fur a few hours ago. His mane had the same effect, and it also looked clumped in some places. A slightly closer look saw that the fur underneath his eyes was matted, as if he had been crying. Elias felt fury. If that unicorn did a damn thing, he was going to skip step 2 and move straight into pinning his ass to the training grounds with a Pila. Elias crossed the room and quickly sat down on the edge of his bed. Nightflash didn't look at him. "Was it Whiteshine again?" Elias asked, trying to keep anger from his voice. Nightflash shook his head, and that put Elias's anger off, bringing him back to confusion. Then who had caused such strife with the Pegasus? Elias clasped his hands together and tapped his foot as he waited for Nightflash to say something. When the Pegasus remained silent, still staring at the floor, Elias frowned. "You said you wanted to talk about something, Flash, and if it isn't Whiteshine, I'm afraid I've got no idea what it is. It's got you beating yourself up." "You," Nightflash whispered. Elias blinked, then opened his mouth to speak. Almost immediately, he closed it. After another moment, he sighed. "Well, that didn't take very long," he thought to himself. Elias rubbed the back of his head. "Well, I can't say I'm happy about this, but if you don't want to be friends anymore, I said I'd understand. I'll make sure to leave you be from now on." The words cut his soul like a knife, but Elias pretended not to notice. He was a man of his word, after all. Nightflash looked at him, shocked, however. No, the Pegasus stammered. "That's not what I meant. I still really want to be friends with you, Red." Elias felt a twinge of relief as he looked up from the Pegasus. "Then what? What is this about, Flash?" Nightflash sighed and looked downcast. I wanted to come give you my blessing for courting Bookbinder. She really seems to like you, and..." The Pegasus sighed again, and Elias noticed tears at the corner of his eyes. "I don't want any hard feelings between us. I don't know if you knew. but I have a huge crush on her. I thought she felt the same towards me, but she's never asked me out. He sniffed. She seems to She likes you, though, so I won't stand in your way. Elias sat in dumb silence. Then he smiled, followed quickly by a small chuckle. That was quickly followed by a laugh, then several more. It took a little warm-up, but Elias was soon rolling with laughter. Nightflash growled at him in his unusual display of anger. This isn't funny, Red. She's really important to me. Elias gestured to the Pegasus to move to the bed. Come on, come over here, you fuzzy monster. It's not funny yet, but it will be. Come here. Nightflash hesitated for a second, but slid off the chair, moving to the bed as he sat beside Elias. He looked at the man carefully. Elias did the same back, but he couldn't help but laugh at the Pegasus again. The pout Nightflash gave in response didn't help. Elias threw an arm around the pony. Look, Flash. He chuckled again. Bud, go ask her out. She isn't courting me. She's waiting for you. I shouldn't be telling you this, but you two are clueless about each other. I've known you for a little over a week, and I already know more than either of you would even make the first move without a poke to do so. Bookbinder told me that she's worried she'll scare you away by doing things the traditional way. She wants you to ask her out. He'd have to apologize to Bookbinder for revealing her secret, but ultimately, Elias knew it was for the best. It wasn't even a noteworthy secret anyway, and the revelation would bring her what she wanted. So all in all, it would be a net positive. Nightflash mulled in silence, and then looked up Elias with big eyes. Really? He asked hopefully, his tail swishing slightly. Elias smirked and shook his head. Yes, really. I doubt she's even expecting anything special. Do something you always do with her and drop the question. Make it seem like any other day. Nightflash grinned at him goofily. That look returned to his eyes, and Elias quickly got to his feet. He pointed at the pony. No, not twice in one day. I'm already getting soft enough without being constantly hugged. I'm a warrior, damn it. Nightflash stared at him with his goofy smile. He shifted and ruffled his feathers, sitting prim and proper now. He tilted his head slightly. Red, I would like to redeem that one willing hug, no complaints, and a full snuggle. Elias sighed, and then he cursed his past self for even offering such a thing. He had given credit to Nightflash. The pony knew when to use his opportunities. Elias moved back to the bed and sat down, extending his arms out to the pony. Nightflash's butt waggled, and he sprang at Elias, wrapping him tightly in a hug. Elias was surprised when it lasted only a few seconds. Nightflash pulled away quickly, bouncing up and down on the bed. His wings fluttered in excitement as he cheered. She likes me! She likes me! He chirped as he bounced around. Elias watched the Pegasus bounce and chirp happily with a smile. He decided he liked watching Happy Nightflash much better than the sad one. It was a big thing to be willing to part with a crush for a friend. That wasn't lost on Elias. Mid-air, Nightflash froze and flopped lamely to the ground as he missed the bed entirely. His head poked back up in an instant, staring at Elias. Oh, what should I get her? Should I take her to Donut Joe's? It's where we first met, but it's so informal. Should I do it today? Tomorrow? What about next week? Nightflash's muzzle twitched as he stared wide at Elias's chest. What am I going to do? I want it to be special because, well, she's going to be my special sun pony. Nightflash stopped staring at Elias's chest and looked up to his eyes. What would you do, Red? Have you ever had a special sun pony? Elias shook his head. No, and I won't have one. Friends are one thing, but that's a bit serious for my taste. Besides, you think any girl's gonna want to go anywhere with this ugly face? He asked, pointing to his unevenly haired face. He made a mental note to shave. Perhaps if he was clean-shaven, he'd feel marginally better. Nope, he continued. No, I'm better off sticking to what I'm good at. I'd recommend you look to somebody with a bit more experience in the matters of the heart. Nightflash frowned as he stared at Elias. All right, Red, if you say so. I think you should stay open-minded to the idea of a special sun pony, though. It took you no time at all to make 3 great friends. The Pegasus paused for a moment. Actually, you made 4. Dr. Scalpel counts. Nightflash's tail wagged back and forth. And that's only in a couple of weeks. Imagine if you found a special sun pony. You can go on dates, move out of the castle. It would be great. Plus, you can get somebody who likes stuff that you like, and that have somebody to share everything with. There are no downsides. Elias snorted. I'll keep that in mind. Still, you're better off asking someone else for dating advice, because I don't have any human experience, let alone any practice with pony dating. I imagine there are some important cultural differences. Nightflash nodded thoughtfully. His eyes lit up and he grasped as he had an idea. Leaping to his feet, Nightflash bolted towards the door, and he then stopped and sprinted back, hugging Elias forcefully. Thanks, Red. You're the best friend a stallion could ask for. Elias patted the back of the pony. Sure, Flash. Just trying to catch up for what you and Bookbinder have done for me. May not think so, but I owe the both of you. Nightflash smiled. No, you don't, but thanks for being a good friend anyway. I think the future's going to be bright. Pun intended. Elias groaned and shoved the pony away from him. Get out. No puns around me. Nope, we're done here today. Nightflash laughed and trotted to the door as he opened it to leave. He turned, a smile still on his face. See you tomorrow, Bright. And early for breakfast tomorrow. Elias groaned again and grabbed a book. The door was already closed by the time it was in the air. Elias flopped back as it hit the door and decided to doze. It would suffice until Scarlet's shield got back. After an exhaustive morning of talking about human battle strategy, Elias had to drag his feet to make it to the cafeteria. Unlike the usual mornings where he got at least a few hours of sleep before he was jarred awake by a night terror, a morning with Scarlet's shield was far worse. The pony's energy seemed inexhaustible. It had been after one of the afternoons before Elias blacked out the first time. He had managed to shake himself awake and had continued right where he left off, until 20 minutes later when he blacked out again, this time collapsing onto his bed. When he woke up, it was to Scarlet trying to tuck him in. Elias had tried to get back up to continue, but the pony had easily pushed him down, telling Elias to sleep with the promise that they would pick it up where they left off in the morning. When Elias woke up with 20 minutes to get to his shift, he scrambled madly to burst an adrenaline race through his system. Unfortunately, that boost immediately faded once he was at his post. The rest of the night was a blur that Elias only woke up from when he was taking his morning meal. As he staggered away from the food line, he quickly spotted Scarlet, still poring over maps, next to the very close Bookbinder and Nightflash. Elias did his best not to fall into his seat, doing so long enough that he could push his food, a bowl of tomato soup, out of the way to his collapsing face. As his head thudded to the table, Elias heard Bookbinder giggle. He cracked open an eye, quickly locating the unicorn pressed tightly against a grinning Nightflash. Elias made note of the blue feather tucked behind her ear, wondered vaguely if that had been there before, then decided he didn't care. He closed his eyes again, praying for once that sleep would take him. The noise of the cafeteria left him unable to sleep, however, so Elias grunted, rolling his head so he could look at the pair easier. Took my poor advice, I see, he said. Nightflash nodded enthusiastically. Yep, thanks so much, Fred. I convinced Bookbinder to go to breakfast with me, and then I asked her to be my special sun pony over her favorite donut. Bookbinder sighed softly. It was the best thing ever. I couldn't have wished for a better first date. She stuck her tongue out at Elias. And for somebody with so many secrets, you stink at keeping them. Elias raised a finger. Your secret was dumb and made Nightflash think you were courting me. Me telling him brought you together, so now you can both be happy. If anything, you should be thanking me. You two have been danced around the issue for months. Bookbinder rolled her eyes, then grinned mischievously. Okay, Elias, I'll thank you all right, with a big, snuggly hug. Elias flipped up a different finger as he pointed at the unicorn. I'm too tired to deal with you today. Elias snorted and rolled his head, glaring with one eye at Scarlet. The Pegasus didn't seem to notice for a moment. When he noticed, he just stared back. What? He asked. Elias didn't say anything, just continued glaring at the pony. Scarlet looked to Flash and Binder, then back to Elias. What? He asked. A bit of nervousness tinged his voice. Elias continued to glare in silence. Bookbinder snorted and prodded the back of Elias's head. Hey, be nice. He's not used to dealing with old ponies like yourself. Elias turned to withering glare to her. Not old, he grumbled. She stuck her tongue out at him. Oh, well, you certainly know spring chicken. I don't know anyone our age who has all the physical issues you do. Aching joints, grouchy when you don't sleep, picky diet.
Admit it, Elias. You're just not human. You're an old human.
I'm 19, he grumbled as he faced the table, closing his eyes again as he felt his exhaustion attempt to overtake him. He welcomed the black of the abyss of sleep, and in truth couldn't wait to get off shift so he could collapse into bed. Scarlet could stuff it for an evening. Elias could probably just throw his copy of Sun Tzu at the pony. That should keep him busy. Bookbinder poked the back of his head.
Hey, I didn't catch what you said. How old are you?
Bookbinder asked. Elias grunted but didn't respond. This resulted in another prod to the back of his head. He also could hear Nightflash snickering, while also whispering into Bookbinder's ear to leave him be. The unicorn didn't listen, however, and continued to poke the back of Elias's head.
Come on, at least give me a hint. A birthday, maybe. We've talked so much and we still don't know any of the good stuff.
I already told Princess Luna. Go ask her. Elias grumbled softly. He felt Bookbinder huff and shift closer.
Can you please say that again? Your old man voice is grumbly and I can't hear it.
Elias sat up as he squinted at her. She merely smiled back. So innocent and sweet. If it was anyone else, he might have smacked her upside the head as she was so fond of doing to him. I already told Princess Luna. Ask her. Elias then let his head thud back to the table and Bookbinder gasped.
My. And what situation has our big, strong Elias gotten himself into where he's telling the princess his birthday?
She was mocking him. That much was clear. He had the upper hand, however. Being an angry, bitter troublemaker constantly gave him a wealth of stories, even in Equestria. Got thrown in a dungeon, she decided that she would try to make me open up, so she keyed the door to my magical signature so that it would only open when I opened it. He smiled broadly. Joke was on her because I don't have any magic, though she doesn't believe that. She got locked in there with me, so to pass the time until someone came looking, we asked each other questions. Elias tilted his head so that he could look at Bookbinder while he smirked. So, since you want to know, I already told someone. Go ask Princess Luna. She knows more than most. Bookbinder sat still for a moment, then smacked Elias in the back of the head, sticking her tongue out at him.
You're mean, Elias. You know I'll never do that.
Elias nodded. Exactly. It's a win-win for me. Bookbinder huffed again, and then she looked at Nightflash.
Can you get him to tell? You know his weaknesses, right?
Nightflash shrugged. I don't know anything. All I know is that he lies about whether or not he likes hugs, and he does not like sleeping. Elias glared at the Pegasus while Bookbinder eyed the human with a huge grin.
Elias, is there something you're hiding from us about hugs?
She asked innocently. Elias scowled in reply. No, I don't like physical contact of any kind. Rule number 2 exists for a reason. Nightflash is just love-struck and is associating his feelings for you with me. Nightflash snorted. I think I can tell when some pony likes hugs, or not. I hate to throw you under the carriage, but... I'll kill all of you, Elias said, burying his head under his arms. No one will find the bodies. Bookbinder laughed and Elias heard her walk around the table. The unicorn climbed atop of the bench and then on top of Elias. She then settled her fluff on his head, and the man glowered at the two Pegasi that were barely containing their laughter. Bookbinder, get off, Elias said, trying to sound angry. The fuzzy being draped over his skull shifted as she found balance on his head and shoulders. Her chest fur pressed warmly into his hair. Bookbinder tissed.
Nightflash, I think you're right. Our old grumpy human just says all the things he does to make himself look tough. I think we need to hug him more and make him show his true self to the world. We'll make him soft, cuddly.
Elias pushed himself up quickly, and Bookbinder somehow remained perched on top of his head. As he reached up to remove the unicorn to teach her a lesson about calling him soft, Princess Luna and Princess Celestia walked into the cafeteria, followed swiftly by Captain Nightshade in shining armor. The cafeteria burst into motion as everyone quietly snapped to attention. That included Elias and Bookbinder, who, unfortunately for the both of them, didn't climb down before she did so. The result was a new kind of plume as two hooves found perches in his hair, while the other pair balanced on his shoulders. She stood at her best attention, though Elias knew that her face matched his own, absolutely crimson with embarrassment. Elias was already one of the tallest creatures in the room, and having a waist-high unicorn on top of him drew eyes like a magnet, including those of the two guard captains and the two princesses. Luna snorted once as she walked forward, waving a furious-looking nightshade back with a wing. Elias and Bookbinder were both forced to remain absolutely still while the princess approached. If either of them moved, they would draw ire. Whatever Luna intended to do, they would both just have to suffer through. Luna stopped sharply in front of Elias, her eyes glancing up the Bookbinder only briefly, before she looked at his face. She seemed to ponder what to say for a second, and then smiled slightly. Elias hated that cheeky smile.
Godman Bright, I believe I like your new hat. Is it custom?
She asked playfully. Elias rolled his tongue in his cheek, too late to be anything but smart back. It's just some local fare. A friend recommended it, he replied, glaring at Night Flash. The Pegasus wisely decided not to meet his eyes. Luna noticed, but decided not to comment. She smirked as she fake-studied the hat.
I must say, it is very soft-looking. Is the fur real?
It is, though the hat is not quite finished. Its fur still needs some preparation before being presentable to the general public. He heard Bookbinder sharply intake hair. Elias had no doubt she'd try to make him pay for that jab later, but right now, she deserved it. Luna nodded as if she had just been told some revolutionary thing.
Quite. Do be careful not to ruffle the fur too much, however. You wouldn't want such a fine hat flying away.
Elias snorted. I have a friend who will take very good care of it. He recently became an expert on this particular hat. Luna smiled.
That sounds wonderful. Give him my congratulations.
Her smile dropped and her nose came up.
Despite how wonderful that hat is, I will have to ask you to remove it, Guardsman. It is against regulation to wear it indoors.
Of course, Princess. Elias scooped the pony off the top of his head, and Bookbinder issued a small eep as he held her under one arm. Now able to look at her face, Elias was happy to note that she was painted a lovely shade of bright red. She refused to meet anyone's eyes, including Luna's. She seemed to wait expectantly for Elias to set her on the ground, and when that didn't happen, Elias felt the pony trying not to squirm in his grip. Luna snorted again as she smiled and turned away.
Carry on, Guardsman.
As she walked back silently to the entrance where her sister and two guard captains were waiting, Bookbinder began to squirm slightly.
Elias, put me down. You're making a scene,
she whispered as softly as she could. Elias smirked. Oh, I don't think I will, he replied equally as soft. If you don't want even more attention, I suggest you stop. You haven't even begun seeing a scene yet. Elias and Bookbinder noted a glare from Nightshade, and with another small eep, Bookbinder stopped wriggling about, falling completely still. She flushed red again, and Elias had no doubt that she would be teased for days to come. Good. Luna nodded to Celestia as she moved to her side, a small smile on her face. Celestia looked around the silent cafeteria. With great dramatic flair, she cleared her voice and then smiled warmly.
I'm glad to see all of you are well on this fine morning. Our announcement is a brief one, but extremely important. As you all may know, we will be conducting the Royal Assessment Training exercise soon, and I am pleased to announce that it will be 2 weeks from today.
Elias saw Scarlet stiffen and begin to sweat out of the corner of his eye. Throughout the cafeteria, there was a small tone of hushed whispers as the guards discussed an upped timetable. It was more than loud enough for Nightshade to hear.
Quiet, the lot of you,
she snapped.
Show some respect before I have the lot of you running laps around the castle grounds.
The whispering stopped, and the Thestral gave a slight nod to Celestia.
Please continue, Princess.
Celestia smiled.
Thank you, Captain.
The guards, she continued speaking.
I realize this sooner than many have anticipated, but I assure you it is with good reason. Over the course of the winter this year, your guard training will be increased in preparation for a royal wedding this spring.
Celestia inclined her head towards the white unicorn at her side.
Our very own Captain Shining Armor will be married early April, and as such, we hope to have all the guard branches at full strength for security purposes.
The alicorn smiled widely.
Which brings me to my second announcement. Captain Armor and Captain Nightshade have already taken the names of every pony who wishes to volunteer for Team Captain, but this year's exercise will have an extra stake. Due to Captain Armor's marriage, he will be promoted and moved elsewhere, vacating the position of the solo guard captain. Any pony who wishes to submit an application is expected to volunteer for exercise captain.
This brought out another round of whispers, significantly louder this time. Celestia waited for a few seconds before she cleared her throat, waiting for the guards to quiet down again.
Regardless if you're chosen or not, your performance during the exercise will be monitored closely by myself and Luna, so do your very best.
She smiled broadly, and she and Luna turned, leaving the cafeteria. Nightshade stepped forward.
Any pony who still wants to volunteer for team captain will do so by noon today with either Captain Armor or myself. That is all.
And she and Armor left as well. The cafeteria immediately burst into excited chatter. Elias noticed several ponies follow immediately after Nightshade. That was overshadowed by the now flailing pony under his arm.
Let me go, Elias, she said, smacking his chest with her hooves. I can't believe you wouldn't put me down the entire time.
Elias snorted as she set the indignant pony on the bench. She crossed her hooves and turned away from him. Elias looked to Scarlet and Flash. Scarlet was already busy poring over his maps again, his vigor renewed. Flash just smiled at Bookbinder and Elias. As Elias sat back on the bench, he said, "That's what you get for trying to hug me in public. Serves you right." Bookbinder stuck her tongue out at him.
Just need to be more open to public displays of affection,
she replied. Bookbinder then sighed and turned to face him.
But I'm sorry. Shouldn't have tried to force hugs out of you. It wasn't a nice thing to do. Friends?
She extended her hooves, smiling innocently, and Elias scoffed. Really? You're apologizing for trying to force a hug by asking for a hug. Bookbinder huffed and crossed her hooves.
Fine, be like that. One of these days you're gonna beg me for a hug.
The unicorn scooted under the table, popping up next to Nightflash. The Pegasus extended his hooves to Bookbinder, who smiled widely, then two embraced. And as they did so, Bookbinder stuck her tongue out again at Elias.
See, Nightflash is a proper gentlecold. He gives me hugs whenever I want or need them.
Anything for my special mare, Nightflash said as he gave her a peck on the cheek. Bookbinder flushed red and swatted at the Pegasus. Nightflash ducked under the swing. He wrapped his wing around the unicorn and pulled her close. Elias rolled his eyes at their antics and grabbed his plate, checking the temperature of his soup to see if it was still edible. Finding it lukewarm, Elias shrugged and began to drink it. He was about halfway through the bowl when he noticed Nightflash giving him a funny look. Elias set the bowl down and wiped his mouth. What? Nightflash laughed. Are you going to volunteer for team captain or what? I asked you twice. Elias frowned, his mind suddenly alight. No, I'm not, he said quickly, his voice raising ever so slightly. Scarlet poked his head up from the maps. Come on, Elias, you should do it. I'm going to, and you have more knowledge about human battle tactics. You'd be great. Elias shook his head. He ran a hand through his hair. No. Whoever wants to get my help with the plan, then I'll act as a tactician. Otherwise, I want no part of leading anything. Nightflash and Bookbinder both frowned. Elias felt like he could feel stares on his back, and he struggled to ignore them. To ignore everything. He took deep breaths as he tried to keep calm. Scarlet pressed again, however. But don't you have battle experience? All the rumors say you used to be some big commander or something. Don't you want to do that again? No! Elias shouted at the Pegasus, his anger flashing to a peak in a heartbeat. His fist slammed into the table. I already said I don't want no part in leading anything. I said that. So drop it. Elias panted and he felt sweat stream down his back. He stared at the table and he felt his vision blur slightly as he began to hyperventilate. Trying to keep control, he pointed a finger at Scarlet. I said I didn't. Elias swallowed roughly. His hands began to shake violently. Elias wrapped his hands around his head as he rocked on the bench. He closed his eyes as he felt a familiar mix of anger, sadness, and worst of all, panic well up in his chest. Even with his eyes shut, Elias felt the room spin. He felt the fuzzy body on top of his back almost immediately, but swiftly followed by a second one pressed against his arms. Elias heard whispers, and for a second, he thought his panic attack was growing worse. He pulled back slightly, trying to find a way to close his ears. Only when his body in front of him moved close again did he realize that the whispers were emanating from someone else, rather than from within his head.
Come back to here now, Elias. You're with us. And just us.
Bookbinder whispered softly in one ear. We've got your back, Red. Nobody here but us and you. Nightflash whispered in the other. I can't. Not again. Elias whimpered softly. Bookbinder ran her hoof through his hair. Shh, she whispered.
It's all right. Nobody's going to make you do anything you don't want to. Just put it out of your mind. Just focus on our voices and those terrible hugs you hate so much.
Elias snorted as he felt a part of his mind disappear back into his dark hole. I should smack Night Flash for that comment, Elias said, his voice still shaking a bit. The Pegasus on his head shifted slightly. Why do I get smacked? I didn't say anything. Elias felt Bookbinder press a little tighter against him.
Don't worry, honey. It's just how Elias shows his love for us. Think of it as an aggressive thank you with his hand.
Elias cracked his eyes open and Bookbinder smiled back at him. Elias quickly noted that they were under Night Flash's wings again. Looking up, saw the Pegasus smiling down at him. Though it did not erase the look for concern of Flash's eyes, seeing the Pegasus looking at him upside brought a slight smile to Elias's face, and it certainly helped when Bookbinder began sticking her tongue out at him. Elias sighed, letting his head thud on the table. I really gotta start getting a handle on this. Bookbinder nuzzled his arm softly.
Maybe there's nothing to get a handle on. Healing is slow. I imagine whatever is causing these panic attacks is recent and painful. I won't pretend it'll be easy, but we're going to be at your side the entire time, alright? Night Flash and I will never leave you alone with this.
Night Flash settled his muzzle into the crook of Elias's neck. She's right, Red. You're never getting away from us. It's what friends are for. Elias smiled. Thanks, too. I don't think I can say in words on how much I'm glad to have you both. He reached out and scratched Bookbinder behind the ear. The unicorn sighed softly, pressing against his hand.
You don't need to when you can do that.
Elias felt Night Flash sink slightly on his head. Now hold on. Don't I get any? He was interrupted as Elias's other arm curled up, catching him just behind his left ear. The Pegasus relaxed completely, his leg kicking Elias in the side. Ah, that's the stuff, he said happily. Elias snorted as he continued to scratch the ponies for a minute before he stopped, pushing up to be released. Night Flash slid off of his back, but instead of moving around the table to sit by Bookbinder once more, the Pegasus settled next to Elias, leaning on the human. Bookbinder levitated his food over as the two began to eat quietly. Elias took a deep breath and brought his own meal closer, eating it despite its cold temperature. When he looked up from the soup, he found Scarlet staring at him, ears rimmed with the pony's eyes and his mouth hung open, as if he was struggling to say something. Elias stared at the pony for a moment, tight-lipped as he quelled a bit of anger. Technically speaking, the Pegasus had triggered the panic attack, and therefore should be punished for it. Elias let out a loud exhale. No, that wasn't right. While he wasn't as close with Scarlet as he was with Bookbinder and Flash, he was still a friend. He just needed to listen in the rules. Scarlet? The Pegasus gulped and looked away. Yeah? Scarlet asked carefully. Let's start with the obvious. First, that was completely your fault, but you also had no idea that would happen. I don't blame you, okay? Scarlet nodded and sniffed. I'm sorry, Elias. I didn't know. And I shouldn't have talked about it, and... Elias held up a hand and stopped the pony from rambling. I already said I don't blame you, so an apology isn't necessary. The second thing is, just avoid the subject in the future. I'll try to keep stuff like this from happening, but I probably won't be able to catch it all. If it happens, it happens. And as you saw, you already have something in place to help me get out of the panic attack, alright? Scarlet nodded again. Okay, Elias, do you need me to join in the next time? Bookbinder smiled widely.
Absolutely. The more the merrier. Especially since you haven't had one of his ear scratches yet. It'll make Elias more comfortable.
Elias raised an eyebrow at the unicorn. Only if you're comfortable with missing out on scratches occasionally. Bookbinder looked at him inquisitively.
Why is that?
Elias responded by wiggling his fingers. I only have 2 hands. That means 2 ponies get scratched, not 3. Bookbinder sucked air through her teeth, and she looked at Scarlet.
On second thought, maybe Night Flash and I will handle it. We wouldn't want to break Elias's rules.
Elias snorted while Night Flash grinned silently. The 3 began to eat again, with Scarlet looking noticeably less depressed, though his eyes would occasionally drift to Elias's hand. When the human caught him for a 3rd time, Elias snapped. That's right, I almost forgot. Bookbinder, smack Scarlet's shield for me, please. Without even looking up from her meal, the unicorn drilled Scarlet in the back of the head. The Pegasus yelped and rubbed a welt with his hoof. Hey, what was that for? He whined. Elias pointed a spoon at his face. For freaking me out, it's only fair since I snacked him night flesh when he did it. Think of that as your punishment. Scarlet actually smiled at that. Alright, thanks then. I still kind of felt bad. Elias rolled his eyes as they all continued eating in companionable silence. There we go. A special thank you to my Patreon, Chase Lee Master. I really appreciate the fact that you are supporting me. That aside, thank you guys for listening. Please consider leaving a like and subscribe. This has been Firehearth. Have a wonderful day.